All right. For those that I'm pretty sure I see a couple of familiar faces and names, but my name is Equilla Curry, and I am with the York Association, and I am currently serving at St. John's UCC in Red Lion, Pennsylvania. And so, again, welcome to everyone that is with us today for this workshop. We will be engaging the practical business information for church leaders. And Reverend Dale will be leading us today. Reverend Dale will be leading us today. And so I am going to take a moment and pull up his amazing bio so that I can share it with you all. And to those that know Dale, um, and to those that are being introduced to him for the first time. So, is do you say your last name Mease?
That's correct, Aquila.
All
Yeah,
right. So
Aquila, yeah.
All right, so Mr. Meese is a retired IT project manager with 40 years of experience in the IT industry. He has a BS in computer science from Lock Haven State College. He worked for Unisys Corp as an on-site systems software specialist and a project manager at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services for over 38 years, supporting technologies and applications that deliver social services to the most vulnerable Pennsylvanians. Dale is a lifetime member of the United Church of Christ and is currently a member of Christ Church United Church of Christ in Elizabethtown, PA. He serves he services to Christ Church has his service to Christ Church has included a number of leadership positions, including deacon, elder, consistory secretary, and vice president. He has also served as a leader of the church's future planning committee that has been focused on developing a vision to improve accessibility within the church. He has also led the capital campaign committee that is working on funding the accessibility improvements. He is a key member of the church's technology team and works on supporting the church's PCs and network and producing the live stream broadcast of the workshop services. Dale was a longtime member of Pembroke UCC in Harrisburg. He was first initiated into church leadership at Pembroke in 1987. My grandson would say that's the 1900s. At Pembroke UCC, he has also served as a chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, a co-chair of the Strawberry Festival, consistory president, vice president, and the building fund treasurer. He was deeply involved in church business matters, including loans, stewardship campaigns, and insurance. Dale has served in wider church ministry through Penn Central Conference. He has served on the conference board of directors as a member of the finance committee, chair of the finance committee, and secretary. He has delivered conference financial presentations and served as a member of special task force for the conference. He is also an active member of the Keystone Conference Finance Committee and Generosity Team. Dale also serves as a lay supply preacher at churches throughout Penn Central Conference. He has also visited over 35 of the churches in Penn Central Conference. That was a lot, y'all. And so, again, to introduce to you all, this is Dale Meese, and he will be presenting to us practical business information for church leaders. So we will be having questions and answers. I will mute people, ask that you raise your hand. I will see everything, and you can put in the chat, and we will make sure that we share that in the space. Is there anything else you would like to add, Dale, before I offer us a prayer?
No, I think you're good, Aquila. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for being the host and for facilitating our workshop this evening too. Very much, Aquila.
Not.
Yeah.
Um, did I'm sorry. I just somebody can. Did y'all? Is the record? Do I need to hit the record?
Oh, actually, I think Paul has a recording on.
It is already. I just
I
wanted to
think
make
it's on
sure that it
already.
was recording. All right. So let us gather our hearts and minds as we come together. Holy Creator, as we come boldly before you today, we say thank you. Thank you, oh God, for your presence. Thank you for this moment that you allow us to gather one more time, that we can share, that we can learn, and that we can be present with one another, but most importantly, with you. So we thank you for this experience. We thank you for the information and the tools that we will receive to be better stewards of your church, to be better stewards of your people, and to be better stewards of one another. So we thank you for this moment and this opportunity. Amen.
Thank you, Aquila, very much. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking your time on such a beautiful evening to spend some time talking about church business. And again, it's an honor to be with you all. I'm glad to have the opportunity to share things this evening. So we'll start moving through the slides again. Aquila, help us with, if you have questions, we'll have some dialogue at different points. And we'll have time for question and answers. I put together quite a bit of information, but we'll give you some background as we get things started. One of the things I find when it comes to doing church business, and this evolved over the 38 years that I've done church business, one of the things that I realized probably in the last 10 years was church business is not like other business. It is in many ways, but one of the things that we need to make sure we do is that we ground ourselves and center ourselves when we have meetings. It's always important, and we'll talk about meetings as part of our topics this evening, but finding some centering piece and finding centering scripture is always helpful, along with doing devotionals. So the scripture that I picked for this evening are these words from John in the conversations he was having with the disciples. And I would put us in place as the disciples in the here and now. So here are these words from John chapter 15, verse 16. You did not choose me, but I chose you. And I appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. One of the things I've been learning in the last several years at Christ Church in Elizabethtown is we've been working on future planning, and major project that we've been focused on is accessibility improvements. And one of the things that I find is it's important in asking the why questions. The why questions help you focus on, knowing the mission and ministry for what we're doing. What's driving us to do this? What's going to give us the energy and help us go forward? And part of what I want to give you some background a little bit with related to business, knowing business things about our church is, as we know, and Aquila shared in the bio, I was a longtime member of Pembroke United Church of Christ in Harrisburg. I have very fond memories of being there, being part of the congregation. About in the 2020-ish timeframe, or 2019, 2020 timeframe, I was being called to go, to move and take my gifts, there were things that took me to Christ Church in Elizabethtown to join and be a member. And so again, if you work in church, if you do church work, you have some history, and it gets around in the circles of who you are and what you can do. So it wasn't long after, with the first opportunity, I got asked to serve on consistory. And at the first consistory meeting I went to, I was elected president. Again, quite an honor. What I could tell you how it turned out was, and part of the reason we're having this dialogue this evening are some things about knowing your constitutional bylaws. And I was the shortest term consistory president. I only was in the role for a week, because what we found is the bylaws prohibited electing a president that was not a member of the consistory for at least 1 year. So, but what I found in that week, or in that time of moving in this position, is like, well, what do I need to know about this church? I mean, I knew Pembroke Church so well. I knew where our files were. I knew the business things. We worked on those business things. But going into a new church And I figured this applies. And again, I'm glad to see we have a mixture of pastors and also lay leaders joining us this evening, because this applies to all of us. You know, in our life's journey, we relocate from, you know, we are called at different points to church, to other churches and stuff. So what I put together for this evening are these business things I've kind of looked at as, well, if I'm going to be in this role, what do I need to know that I don't know about this church? And so I put together this list of answers that I came up with for the why question. So first thing, the answers to the why know this business is so we can love our neighbors like Jesus taught, so that we can be focused on being the church and doing ministry, as opposed to being so focused on the business matters of the church. So that's the first thing that came up in the why questions, so that we can support the ministries of our church. Our churches are there to do ministry. We're not there to be and function as a business. We are there to minister to God's people in our community and in service to others. Part of why it's important to know that the business things that we'll talk about this evening is so we can protect and serve our church. And one of the things I've learned in my service to Penn Central Conference, I've served on the board of directors for Penn Central Conference. I'm concluding 8 years of service on the board of directors at this time. And I'm still staying on through the end of this year. And who knows what's coming next. I've also served outside of on a for-profit board of directors for a small company. And things I learned in that company, and it was a subsidiary of a credit union, was part of what you're there for as board of directors and leaders in church is to protect and serve your church, your business. And protect and serving it is that, you know, you're protecting it from unforeseen circumstances. You're also protecting it from, in the business world, lawsuits and insurance claims when you can, you know, being safe and protective that way. Here's a good one. Again, I've also had to wear a lot of financial hats in church. And so that we can be good stewards of our church's financial resources. Again, it's things that we do when we look at our church, like with our safety eyes on, our safety glasses on, and we look at things like, you know, we really probably should put reflective paint on our outdoor stairs so folks can see them in the dark, those kind of things. You know, again, it's to be help us avoid lawsuits. It's also to help avoid insurance claims. It's also protect, again, you know, we're going back to that, we're protecting the people in our church and the people that we serve. And this last one has, I think where we're at as a church right now in 2025 is very near and dear to me, as much as we can, so we can ensure that our church will outlive our lifetime. And we see, we will hear at our annual meeting this weekend about churches that have had to conclude their service within Penn Central Conference. And it's always a little disheartening to me that it had to come to that we couldn't work through things that we, you know. So again, it's, you know, these are there, you know, for the folks on the call, are there other reasons why you're interested in learning more about church business, and or things that are really, you know, giving you concerns, or things maybe hopefully we'll talk about tonight? And we can think about, you know, we'll have a good open discussion time later on too. So let's give you a quick overview of what the topics that I have tonight in this group of 8. And we'll go through these, some highlights about each of these things. First, we're going to start with meetings. Then we'll have some quick dialogue about constitution and bylaws. We'll talk about government affairs and dealing with the government. Contracts, very interesting. Again, some things I've been working on recently I've worked on in the past through churches, dealing with contracts, understanding contracts. Insurance is very critical for us, again, as we look at protecting the church and protecting our parishioners and the people who use our church property. Along with that is church property. There's some things that are helpful for us to know about our church property. And so we'll talk about that. And then the last two items I kind of combined together, but it would be personnel items related to looking at things from the standpoint of employees and key volunteers. So the first topic we'll get into is meetings. And I was looking for pictures to add to help us, get in the moment and think about things. And I'm grateful for us that we have this picture of, this is the board of directors of Penn Central Conference in action. It was either this spring or last spring. And we were at St. Thomas United Church of Christ. So we do in church, as well as other organizations, we do meetings. It's how we work together and share ideas and come together to do the best we can for church. So some meeting tips that I have to share. And again, these may be very familiar to you all. In putting these together, I help look at things from the standpoint of trying to stay grounded from my own standpoint, as well as the revelation of why these were important. So the first one really is start and end every meeting, every church meeting in prayer. And for a number of years, we were working on certain things in church settings. And it was like any other business meeting. We came, we sat down, we had an agenda, and we just started to go at what we were working on. And what I found at one point, and I'm very fortunate, my cousin is a retired United Church of Christ minister, Reverend Geneva Butts, if you would know Geneva. She was at Old First Reformed Church in Center City, Philadelphia, as well as she served on the conference staff at Pennsylvania Southeast Conference. So I was in touch with my cousin Geneva about something we're working on at church, and just we weren't getting that right traction and synergy with us. So in talking to my cousin Geneva, the first thing she asked me, she says, "Are you starting your meeting with a prayer?" And I said, "To be honest with you, no, we aren't." She said, better yet, she said, "then I guess you're not ending it with a prayer either." I said, "No." So, but what we went into was, well, why are those important? And so these are revelations she shared with me, and they've really resonated with me. And church meetings, ever since she and I had this conversation, take a much more deeper meaning. Your opening prayer invites God to be with you and within you as you discern the business at hand. Again, it's part of the centering that we do to bring meaning together. Again, it helps to center you and your team in the who we are here to serve. And in some cases, what we find without doing this, what I found, we weren't being centered in who we were there to serve. Your closing prayer, again, what I found too with this is we thank God for being present with us and being our guide and an active presence in our meeting. I know, and maybe you guys do this too, certain meetings we have at church, we will close with a common prayer, like the Lord's Prayer. And it's good to close with a prayer, as well as closing with a common prayer is nice because you bring people together. We're sharing something that we all know. When I'm running meetings, or if I get asked to run meetings, I do like to, again, reflect when we're closing of the gratitude to God for being with us and guiding us and shepherding us and being present. What I've also found since doing meetings using these techniques, what I find is there are those revelations that happen in a meeting, and I can't explain that they would have just come out otherwise. We were just treating it like a regular business meeting I had at the office. Some tips about meetings, some practical things. Again, as Aquila noted in my biography, I'm a retired IT technical support specialist. I also served as a project manager for 21 years before retiring. Um, and so I learned things. I had to run a lot of meetings and work with some very diverse groups and multi-company groups and stuff. So there's things that come into play with some good common. They're all, again, probably very common sense things. Make sure when you're running a meeting that you prepare an agenda for every meeting. May not be the most complicated agenda, but it's good to have an agenda that you know what you're looking to talk about. The agenda provides guardrails. I love that term, guardrails. We're hearing it more and more as we get into some dialogue about how our country is going sometimes, and some things. It's like, yeah, we need guardrails to keep us on track. So what the agenda does is it helps you and your team know the business that you're called to do and what you're not called to do at a meeting. And I found that maybe you guys run into the same thing where, oh, we have a lot of folks that serve in our churches that serve on multiple committees and different areas of expertise, different items, whether it be finance and stewardship or worship or property. And we have some same people serve across different committees and teams. It's a good thing. But what happens sometimes, I've also run into this, and maybe you guys have too, of where, hey, we're all here, we're having a meeting about this. Well, it's not my meeting, but since we're all here, let's go talk about this too. And all of a sudden your meeting got commandeered by this other topic, so it's always important with the agenda to stay on the agenda you have first. Then if you have your business clear that you were called to do, and the other thing that happens is if you get into these other topics, sometimes what you'll run into is, well, we're kind of having an ad hoc meeting of this other team, but oh, by the way, all the people from the other team aren't there. So it's not inclusive to do, to start doing that kind of stuff. It can be very detrimental to your church. The other thing that having an agenda does, it helps you look at things from completing the business you have at hand in the time that's allocated for the meeting and stuff that you have allotted for it. My other suggestion, and again, as Aquila noted in the bio, I serve as secretary of the board of directors for Penn Central Conference. I'm secretary of consistory for our church. I write a lot of meeting notes. This weekend is going to be a meeting note extravaganza to get caught up after all the meetings are done. But it's valuable to prepare minutes or meeting notes from meetings for the following reasons. It helps people know what happened, and it also helps you avoid rehashing the meeting the next time. We all have meetings that happen that not everybody that we would like to show up can be there. And I found meetings sometimes where you have an hour meeting. When you're spending 15 minutes rehashing what you did at the last meeting, the people who were at the last meeting can get a little bit annoyed, So minutes, again, it also comes along with being responsible as board members, consistory members, and council members, that you're looking at things, that you do look at the materials, the preparation materials you have for meetings. One of the things, again, that I found, and it's been with the job I had, but also my job and how it worked with doing church, was it helps you see the way forward and helps you start looking for what comes next. We've been doing this, and this. What are the next logical steps that we're going to have to do? Where do we see some challenges? Sometimes where do we see that we're going to need some extra help or expertise? Your minutes and meetings also allow you to help, again, keep your other church leaders and congregation informed, that you're sharing, that it provides transparency. One of the things, again, I'll call out as you close the meeting out, and again, very effective technique. It really helps you getting prepared for what comes next, is do what I call reviewing next steps. Sometimes people refer to as action items, but let's just call it next steps. At the end of the meeting, you've talked about some things. Hey, we're going to do this. We may need someone to research new internet and voice providers for our church. We're going to look for somebody that we're looking to upgrade our network routers and stuff like that. Who's going to do these things? And so that you want to make sure that you're assigning some things that we know who's doing it, and also that folks have an idea when you're giving them an opportunity to see, well, how long is it going to take for them to do these things and stuff. So it's doing this next steps at the end of the meeting, really good exercise. Give yourselves, in a lot of cases, it really can be 3 to 5 minutes sometimes at the end of the meeting that you're going through what are we doing next and who's doing it. Another thing that's real critical is confirm the date and the time for the next meeting at the end of the meeting. One of the things I find with church, compared to when I was working in the office, one of the joys you have there is we all have a common email server, and we have a capability of looking at shared calendars. So you can say, oh, I want to plan another meeting. I need to plan a meeting. You can put the names of your people in, and you can find like available dates and times and conference room resources, that kind of stuff you need. When you're working with folks in church, we all have, I find different times, if you're lucky, if you can find 5 people that have the same email server, let alone finding a shared calendar is almost non-existent. So it's far better to take that last minute or two at the end of a meeting to go through and confirm your date and time for your next meeting. Make sure it's going to work for folks. As well as sometimes you get the sense like, yeah, we have our consistory meeting tomorrow night at our church. One of our members has a vacation they planned 6 months ago. They're not going to be there tomorrow night, but we know ahead of time that they won't be there. And if there's things that they needed to share, they had ready for us at this point. So any questions or anything you'd like to share about meetings at this point? Things that you guys run into or anything at this point? Okay, the next item we have is going to be fun-filled. And that's Constitution bylaws. God bless the Scrabble people for making tiles. It's a great way to call out what we're going to look to talk about. So at this point, we'll transition to some things about the Constitution bylaws, some insights that are well worth sharing and going over between us all. And these are important. Our church's Constitution bylaws are the rules that we are committed to following to conduct church business. It's how we govern ourselves. And the value or the importance of understanding our Constitution bylaws particularly comes into play with how we do church business, that we are fair and equitable in doing it. It also comes into play, knowing our church Constitution bylaws comes into play when we're dealing with business with other parties outside our church. In the financial roles I played, particularly at Pembroke United Church of Christ, we were in a situation that we needed to borrow money from commercial lenders and local banks. And if you all have worked on borrowing money for your church, you realize that when you work with a bank or lending institution, they're going to ask you for information. And one of the things that every loan I ever worked on related to church, you're being asked for, you need to provide us a set of your Constitution bylaws. Typically, what also goes along is you're going to need to provide them with minutes from a meeting that basically gave approval from the congregation to borrow money, and that they're basically doing a sanity check that you're following the rules. So understanding that they are the rules we're committed to following. It's not something, well, we can just bend this particular time. The stories that I hear in various circles is where some churches get into trouble, is where it's like, it doesn't really apply to us right now. Oh, we can just let this go. It's like, no, that's the recipe for trouble. Your Constitution bylaw, they cover elections. And I think these two words are really value using. It's who is empowered and authorized to be the officer of the church. And those are things that are very important. Particularly what I'm finding now as we're looking at working on preparations for the Keystone Conference coming to life. Knowing things, and you've probably seen or heard about Keystone Conference bylaws that have been proposed, put together and stuff. It really is valuable in knowing those things of who the officers are, what they're empowered and authorized to do. Your Constitution bylaws cover roles and responsibilities. They also cover things like I found at Christ Church of, oh, by the way, to serve as president, again, for protection of the organization, it's important that you've served on consistory for a year, that you know how the church, you have some exposure to how the church works. Again, it's protection for yourself, for the church, for the ministries that we share together. Your constitution and bylaws, some of the things that they do is they also provide rules for how our church makes critical decisions, like making major purchases. If we're, buying a new organ, for instance, we have typically most of our constitution bylaws have some considerations for how much money the consistory is authorized to spend without calling it for a congregational meeting. But it is important that we have those rules in place so that they are, again, protections for the church, that we are doing the right things, that people also are aware of the decisions that we're making. The other thing that they do with the critical decisions are there are decisions about the life of our church that affect all of us as members. Again, from a financial standpoint, if it comes to borrowing money, we want to make sure that everyone in our church knows that we're borrowing money, what it's being borrowed for, but also the terms, how many years we're looking, we may be looking at a 5-year loan. How much is the payment going to be per month? Like those kind of things. So it helps us with those decisions about the life of our church. Other things in the life of our church would be calling of a pastor and, things like that. So, so those are some ideas, things for us to think about. As I mentioned earlier, our constitution bylaw provide information on how we're governed when we work with other businesses. One of the things I learned through the years when it came to borrowing money for church was the fact that banks and other lending institutions will lend us money. But I found this from some good bankers we worked with. They were also very candid in sharing is churches are high risk lending customers to bank. No one wants, because as a banker will tell you, they would never want to foreclose on your church. And so they look at things and they scrutinize when the materials we would ask and we need to compile for doing bank loans were significant. I mean, it was easily 30 to 40 pages is what I had to come up with to pull those things together. Financial statements, budgets, how we were doing over 5 years worth of, meeting our commitments, those kind of things. So some other things to know about constitution bylaws. Again, it helps from the standpoint we always have, we have boundary training as part of the conference annual meeting on Friday morning. Knowing the roles of the church officers and the pastors. The constitution bylaws also help us when it comes to boundaries. And they also help us potentially identify when we may be crossing them. And I look at that when it comes to boundaries. Boundaries go both ways in my book. Sometimes there's a lot of focus on what the pastor may or may not be doing. But it also very much applies from my perspective on what we do or don't do as lay leaders and what we should or shouldn't be asking of pastors, and as well as not turning things into, well, the pastor's a church employee in a leadership role, we're going to let them handle this. It's like, no, we need to be shared owners in the life and the work of our churches. Your constitutional bylaws should have things in there about and give you the opportunity to know the length of the terms of your church officers and your consistory or council members. You should have term limits in your constitutional bylaws. Again, in the circumstance where I was president for a week, I read the Constitution multiple times and had several a green highlight or a yellow highlighter to color code some things as to what made sense. Very educational standpoint for me. And again, we worked it out very well. We realized we were in a situation where it was better for me to step away. We had special, we elected somebody else to serve as president. It all worked out for the best interest of the church and everybody involved. Next item I'm going to talk about, again, I wear the hat of the secretary. And as you've seen at the annual meetings, one of the joys that I get to do is I get to share the quorum numbers. And quorum, real simply, is the number of eligible participants that you need to have for meetings. Typically, your constitution and bylaws is going to have 2 quorums that should get called out in there. And what you should know is the quorum that you need for your consistory or council meetings how many constituent members do you need to have? And I've actually heard this story. We've been running into it with leadership structures for churches we've all been dealing with sometimes the downsizing, right sizing that's occurring with churches where we have our church council is set up for 21 members or 18 members or 15 members, but we don't have that pool of people to call upon to serve in leadership roles without creating some challenges. So you can run into some situations where you don't have quorum, and we have this happen on occasion. It surfaces like you just don't have enough quorum to technically conduct business. You should also know the quorum for your congregational meetings. How many people do you need out of your membership role or active membership, and the criteria for being active members? You need to know that quorum before you go the route of conducting business and voting on major decisions in the life of your church. The next item is really important. Know what you cannot do when you do not have a quorum. We're taught not to talk in double negatives, and this is the most acceptable double negative sentence I could ever find, because there are things you cannot do when you do not have a quorum. And the most important thing, if you look at it, I was called into a situation like this to double check things. I'm not a parliamentarian, but Robert's Rule of Order, and you can look up questions related to Robert's Rule of Order online. You can do Google searches. There's online Robert's Rule resources are really good. Key thing you cannot do, and for all of us members, you cannot conduct business. You cannot ask for motions and ask for votes when you don't have a quorum, because they're not valid. Again, if you go back to your constitution, bylaws, or the rules for governing how we run our church, the reality, again, let's use the fact that we're working with a third party or like a bank. They're going to look for minutes. They're going to look at things. Their underwriters and loan advisors are going to look at things from the standpoint of do you have everything in order? And so again, it's understanding that what you cannot do when you do not have a quorum is you cannot transact business. You cannot make motions. You cannot vote to approve things down. You can, as was discussed you can cover materials and reports and share things. You just can't vote and take actions on moving forward with stuff. Oh my gosh, I have more stuff on this. Oh, this is a good one. Yeah, this one actually, I'm glad I added this. It's knowing your church's organizational structure, particularly what's defined in your constitution and bylaws. That includes your consistory council, but there may be committees that are defined in your bylaws. Christ Church in Elizabethtown, one of the committees that we have in our church bylaws is a ministry committee, and it's there to be they serve as in the personnel roles for a church. They work with hiring of non-clergy staff. They don't do search and call, but they will deal with like our office administrator, organist, sexton, or cleaning person's office administrator, those kind of things. And they're defined, that committee is actually defined in our Constitution. The important thing is there may be these committees that are specifically defined in your Constitution. As we were going through the Keystone Conference bylaws and Constitution, I was not a part of that committee, but so I was looking to learn as we had the town halls what was all included in there. And there were things that I realized are like there's a budget and finance committee that is part of the Keystone Conference Constitution and bylaws. How it will also define, it's a committee of the defined for the new conference, but it also goes through how the people are called to serve on there. Our conference, the current Penn Central Conference Board of Directors, all of us who serve on the Board of Directors are asked to serve on one of the three standing committees of the Board of Directors: Personnel, Strategic Planning, and Finance. The new conference, they have some different things related to that and stuff. The other thing that's really important with this is your church may have other committees and teams that perform the work of your church, but they're not defined in your Constitution and bylaws. For instance, a worship committee. At our church, we have a very active worship committee. They do really great work in planning special services, working with our pastor on themes for Lent or Advent, those kind of things. But they're not technically defined in our Constitution bylaws. So it's kind of, there's also those committee, and as we're getting more, sometimes what we're finding, folks, maybe you all run into this at your church, you have trouble finding people, recruiting people to serve on consistory. When you talk to them about a 3-year term, it's like, I don't know, I can make a 3-year commitment, But what you find is what seems to be working well in a number of settings is to go to more of a project-based model where it's like there's a definite timetable for this. We think this work is going to take 6 months to do. And so we can recruit people. Would you help us for 6 months to do this very focused, initiative and stuff? So there's some things about Constitution bylaws. Oh, yeah, I had a lot of stuff about this. Forgot about this slide. Or the other part of this is knowing your committees. And actually what I found is some of the additional folks who became presidents at Christ Church. And I know our current consistory president, she was great. She went through and she made her own list of who is the chair of each of the committees, and when do they meet, what are they called to do, and the key one is what are they authorized to do. And what you run into, there's that difference between what you're called to do. Our worship committee, for instance, is called to help with worship preparations for the sanctuary, make sure that we're decorated, we have proper banners, we have communion preparation handled, coordinating lay liturgists, those kind of things. What our worship committee is not authorized to do is to spend money. When it comes to spending money, they will make a recommendation then to consistory of, we would ask if you could commission for us a new, like we have a new Pentecost banner. We were very fortunate. One of our members, very crafty, incredible sewing skills. And he's made other banners for church. So we asked if he would make a new Pentecost banner and stuff. And it was okay for them to initiate, like, here's what we'd like it to be. But the decision about, how it's paid for and stuff, was tied back to consistory and how we're governed and stuff. So anything about Constitution bylaws you'd like to share or dive into a little more?
There is a question in the chat. What do we do when people do not follow the Constitution or bylaws?
Oh, thanks, Dietmar. It's tough. I think in those cases, and we'll have some dialogue with, there are times where it's like, again, I think it's having, again, working together as your church officers with the pastor to try and work this through of, like, as well as bringing, making sure people have constitution bylaws, calling out to them as, this is how we're governed. You may not like this, and you may not think this is appropriate this time, but this is how we are governed, and we need to follow this, or we aren't going to be in compliance, particularly when it comes to when we're working with other entities. One of the things that we run into on occasion that can be a real challenge is when you get into term limits. When you have that small pool of people that will serve as church officers, it's like, okay, well, you should serve no more than 2 consecutive terms of 3 years each, so no more than a total of 6 years. It's like, oh, well, we don't have enough people to do this. That's a sticky spot. And in those cases, I think the other thing that comes into play with Constitution bylaws is view them as a living document. And there may be points when folks don't agree with it or it doesn't make sense anymore. What we should be doing in those cases then looking at, let's amend them. Let's go through, and this doesn't make sense for us. For instance, one of the things we're doing at Christ Church right now, we're looking at the count of number of consistory members we have. And what we've been finding is it really is hard for us to recruit. We need to recruit a total of 18 consistory members. And we're just having challenges with that. We've had, and it's been a pattern over the last 3 years. So what we're looking at is we're formally going to change it at our annual meeting in the fall. We have some other constitutional and bylaw changes we're going to do. So one of those is going to be to make those changes. And that way you're also in making constitutional bylaw changes and following those change processes, you're also making the congregation aware of it. And you're putting, and again, at some points, I hate to say this, at some points, if there's folks that are really being difficult about this, they have to also come to the point of, well, but this is the way this church is governed and organized, and perhaps what you're looking for, you're not going to find here from what is the good that we all discern as the best for us in our church and stuff. Good question. Demar, thanks for calling that out from the chat. Let's see some other, and we'll
You
tell you
you already answered the second one as you was responding to the first one.
Oh, wait, thanks, Aquila. Is there anything else you should catch up on the chat before we go to the next topic, Aquila?
There's nothing else
Good.
there.
Okay, good. All right. And I'm watching time, so I made a lot of slides. Some of the things will go easier than others and stuff. Next one we're going to talk about is government affairs. And so what we want to do, government affairs come into play with when we're dealing with, from a church standpoint or business in the United States, you've got to deal with federal, state, and local regulations. So we'll go through these real quickly. Some things to know about federal 501c3 nonprofit organizations. Oh my gosh, isn't this is a great topic here, but it's important to know. The National United Church of Christ is the federal 501c3 organization that covers all our local churches and our conferences. We all come under that umbrella. Oh gosh, it's what second bullet point is. We're all under that umbrella of those things. It also becomes part of the covenant that we share as local churches and being part of our associations and conferences, and the covenant that we share with the National United Church of Christ. If you need, at the point sometimes we do get asked about 501c3 nonprofit organization documents. Again, working with a bank is the most common time I've run into this, that we need that set of documents. Those are available through Penn Central Conference. Just make a request in, give them a call or send an email to our conference ministers, either Nora or Carrie, and they'll work on getting those documents back to you and stuff. And they'll add the things that you're going to need with those documents. Pennsylvania state sales tax exemption. This is a hoot. And I'll share you some findings here is we're all familiar with this process. You get these documents from Pennsylvania Department of State. It has your federal employer identification number for your church. But one of the things that gets tricky that and maybe you all have run into this on occasion is we deal in a lot of cases anymore with online businesses. And we found it out at our church, I've heard it from some others, is not all online businesses may accept the church's Pennsylvania sales tax exemption. They have some discretion in that arena. And here's the next one that gets interesting sometimes. Purchases made on behalf of the church by members of the church may not also meet state sales tax exemption requirements with a particular retailer or store. It's kind of fortunate. I mean, we're fortunate sometimes. We have agreements with several local hardware stores in northwestern Lancaster County. The local Lowe's or Home Depot are 25-minute drive away. So there's plethora of really nice hardware stores in Lancaster County. And so we're fortunate some of the local hardware stores have accounts with the church. They keep our church documents on file. So that way they will do if I'm registered with the hardware store, like I need to come down and get electronic components, I can go in and get stuff and they'll just get charged to the church. And it falls under, they have everything worked out with the sales tax exemption. But it is something that you can run into where they won't, unless you're coming and presenting the certificate sometime at the time of purchase. Here's an interesting one. Club purchases, stores like Costco, BJ, Sam's Club. What we're running into, Costco in particular, I love Costco. I think Costco is great. I've gotten some great buys for there. Costco is a great place to buy technology items. Computers, for instance, you get really good deals on computers at Costco. But one of the things that will happen is for online retailers, when you realize that, Costco, Sam's Club, for instance, they're worldwide stores. They have locations worldwide. From their standpoint, one of the things that they've gotten tighter on to keep their paperwork and keep them in compliance is they expect the purchase to be made using a church's club membership. So when it comes to Costco, for instance, you can get a Costco business membership for your church, for instance. Some folks, and I've dealt with this on occasion where it's like there's this debate about, well, is it worth the money or not? My answer is like, we've bought computers in the last 3 years at church. We bought new computers. All of them came from Costco. And we price shopped and we did comparison pricing and stuff. And we got the best deal for what we were looking for at Costco. But we got to the sales tax situation and there was some back and forth about, well, you're not saving the tax on this. Well, the reality of it is we also proof pointed back is like, we also saved $1,000 by buying it from Costco as opposed to buying directly from Dell or from HP. So this is something to keep in mind. It's something you can run into, that some of those, again, my rule of thumb with it is, I think if you look at things of what is available for a church, and I'm not looking to promote Costco or any of these places, but if you look at some of the purchases, the fact that they do deliver, that they have delivery and free delivery in a lot of cases, you can figure out sometimes that the cost of the membership may well be worth it for what you're going to get, as well as the sales tax exemption that gets attached to your membership. So those are some government affairs there. Let's talk a little bit about local government. And I'm going to go through some things here. Some key things. Know the municipality, the Pennsylvania municipality where your church is located. Most of us are going to be in some Pennsylvania municipal government, again, goes around townships, boroughs, cities. And there's different classes of cities, but knowing that municipality is important. It's helpful when it comes to a number of items, things like zoning and building codes. Who do you need to go to for permits if you're doing certain things? Emergency services, the police department that covers your church, knowing what that is. I was up in State College this afternoon or today for a meeting, and when I was coming back, I'm driving through Juniata County, and Juniata County is one of the counties in the state that has no local municipal police departments. They are fully covered by Pennsylvania State Police. But knowing your police department, and what we found, and I want to call out the joy we had of doing this at Pembroke United Church of Christ, was the Pembroke police chief was a great guy for us to work with. We had some community events. They were very supportive of the fact that we were doing things, that we're reaching out to the community, that we're helping to fill community needs. And the police chief can also help you sometimes with, hey, could you help us with some after school type program or back to school program? We could provide school supplies stuff. We did some really nice programs in Pembroke with back to school supplies and stuff. Really nice programs that worked out really well. Also understanding where the police department is helps you with dealing with response times. As we look at and think about things related to church security and those concerns that we all have about active shooter or the unwanted visitor. And if you ever get the chance to sit in on some church security seminars, there's some really good ones out there. The insurance board, they have some nice, I actually sat in one of theirs recently, and they'll talk about the unwanted visitor, the folks that maybe casing your church out. You're not sure they're coming to be disruptive, whatever. So knowing the response time for the police department, knowing where they're coming from is helpful for knowing response times for things. The fire department that covers your church, EMS services. Heaven forbid, and I know through, now that I'm 65 years old, what I've found is, and through my years of going to church, there are times that unfortunately health emergencies don't know where we're at. They occur out of what happens to us in life. This information is helpful for, again, for building community relations. We started a new program at Christ Church in Elizabethtown to raise funds that would go to the social worker for Elizabethtown Area School District. One of the needs that they have is there are times where they're servicing their children in school that are designated or qualified as being homeless and don't have access to good clothing and shoes. And so we started a new program at our church, and we have a community event, and we also do mission offering for this, but it's to raise money to go towards this program. So knowing what your community needs, and I didn't put on here school district, but principals for your schools or superintendents, also a good place for understanding what they need and what they can't provide. Again, learning community needs, understanding response time for emergencies. So there's things about local government that are helpful to know. So let's go. The next section we have is contracts. And I loved when I was looking for pictures and I found this. I thought this was the best picture I could find, because when it comes to dealing with contracts for your church, you should have that studious look. You should be looking at them, reading them. It's one of the things that I like to print. I'd like to do a lot of online work and avoid printing things. But when it comes to business and contracts, I want to print it out that I can look at it, that I can stick my highlighter on it. So let's talk about contracts a little bit. Contracts really come into play. It's how we do business as church, how we do business with other business and things. So one of the things that's important, and one of the things that I've run into since I've been retired for almost 4 years, and church is my second home. It was when I was working too, and when I was going to Pembroke, I got to church a lot there after work, lunchtime, you name it. But it's important to know the contracts and think about the contracts that your church has in place, as well as looking up the terms of those contracts. So let's go up. We'll bring up some recurring contracts that you may run into that may be familiar with us. Some recurring things that you run into is like furnace service and maintenance. You may have a company that you use for servicing your boiler or your heat pumps, lawn care, your organ, IT equipment, and possibly if you're using like hosted services like website, those kind of things. So there's some recurring service contracts that you may run into. They kind of run for X number of years. For instance, our network contract at Christ Church in Elizabethtown is coming up for renewal. It's a 5-year contract. So we got an email, hey, you should really consider working with us because some things have changed, and we can work with you to try and lock you in versus some things that may happen on the more open market from a network standpoint. So you have some recurring things. We all have things like this. Maybe we can think about some other ones that we may run into. Then you also run into one-time contracts. And things that I could think about in this arena are construction. Whether it be new construction or additions, you're going to have contracts related to that. Other things that come into play are those once in a while type of things. New roof, new heating or cooling system, paving your parking lot at your church. Those kind of things where it's, you're going to enter into this, the work's going to be done over a set period of time, and then that contract's, done with. But those contracts sometimes also come with warranties, and that's part of why it's good to look at those. some other things to come into play, and I worked for a private sector company that we were IT software hardware services company, and I was on-site project manager at Department of Human Services. Contracts, what I realized, if there's the shortest but best term I can find for it, is contracts define a partnership. It's a partnership between you as a customer with a vendor or a builder or a services company, that kind of thing. But contracts define a partnership. So what some things we should look for in contracts are the dates that they're in effect. Like I said, with this IT or this networks contract, what we looked at was, well, we got some email, and you're looking at potentially phishing emails like, well, is this really our contract? Like, yeah, it is. We paired up, we knew the contract number, we looked at the dates, we looked at our paper copies to confirm it. So knowing the dates that your contract's in effect. When you're looking at any contract, particularly when it comes up when you're looking at new ones, but also if you go the route of your treasurer changes, sometimes it's good to go back and look at things from the standpoint of what the payment terms are. And you'll see terms in contracts for payment. There's usually going to be a section about payment terms. And you typically see things in the standpoint of upon receipt or net 15 days, net 30 days. You'll see things like that. Net 15 days means that basically 15 days from you receiving our bill at the date of our invoice, your supplier or contractor is expecting payment. Net 30 days, the same kind of thing. Most places typically won't go beyond 30-day windows sometimes. Sometimes when you're doing building contracts, you'll run into situations, some of them apply to your church the same way they would in your home, for instance. You need to give a third up front, a third when the project's halfway completed, the remaining third when the project's completed, that you've accepted things. Give some checks and balances when you do contracts that way. The other thing you're looking for in a contract is what's being provided by the vendor, the builder, the contractor. What are they? It's going to be items, specific pieces, might be, electronics or you name it, as well as the services that go along with it. Installation, setup, training. We added a new screen, overhead screen and projector at our church sanctuary 3 years ago. And one of the things we were looking for in this contract was we wanted that it included some training for our sound team, our sound and media team. So we knew like what it was going to take to turn things on and off, how we were synchronizing, how you troubleshoot some of the stuff like that. So, you want to know what's being provided by the vendor and the contractor. You also, again, going back to what I said about contracts defining a partnership, you also want to be looking at is what the church is expected to do. It's one of the things I learned working with churches that have done some accessibility improvements. I've talked to several other churches within Penn Central Conference. And one of my friends at one of the other churches shared with me of like at their church, they were adding or repurposing some stairwell space and they needed to work things, or they had some things that come into play. They needed to make sure as a church that they moved things out of the way. They also needed to make sure, like from a parking lot standpoint, contractors coming in, they're bringing a crane in, they're bringing in equipment. Well, we need to make sure that people in church know, don't park in this area because tomorrow they're coming, or they're going to be bringing things. They were bringing roofing materials, for instance, that kind of thing. They needed a place to stage materials. So knowing what your church is expected to do, it makes your church also function when you're working with vendors, and that you're also the good customer, that we all also are being fair and equitable in the business that we do with the folks that are providing services to our church. This is important when you go back to some of the things I talked about at the beginning about how, when part of what we do, why we need to know the church business stuff is so we can protect the church. And so one of the things is you want to look at the contract and look at things for the terms of how can the contract be broken and what are the penalties for breaking a contract. They may be penalties for the vendor or the building contractor. There also may be penalties for the church. that comes into play. The 2 points I have underneath this are very important. First, when considering breaking a contract, that should only occur after trying to work out any differences or disputes has failed. You want to try and work things out as much as you can. What I say in those cases too, and I had a situation with addition that I built onto my house 20 years ago, and I was having an issue with a contract or something that they did. It caused some additional damage at my house. In those cases, if you're getting into this where we think we're considering breaking this, we're disappointed with the quality of work or something that was damaged that wasn't expected, my suggestion is contact an attorney. Contact an attorney. What they will also help you do is get some perspective about how bad this is and what the consequences are. If you're in the middle of something, like in my case, I had exposure that was going to be weather related. It's like, now it was better to work with the contractor, work things out, and ultimately we did get things worked out. The last item is understanding these terms about what it takes to break a contract is important. If you don't thoroughly research it, the fact that you can open your church to a lawsuit. So those are things that you don't, again, my experiences and things, things I've seen, things I'm aware of, it's like, you don't want to have to go to court. It's just something none of us wants to do in our personal life. We sure don't want to do it with the church that we love. Insurance. And when I was looking at pictures, I thought this was the best one I could find, is, are you covered? And it's probably one of the key questions we should ask ourselves when we're looking at initiatives and ministries, when we're looking at community partnerships and things. So insurance is how we protect our church. I would encourage you to review your insurance policies. If you're new to church leadership, you should also do it periodically, every couple of years, or when you're doing some new initiative. Your insurance policies will have what are called declaration pages. So at the beginning of your insurance policy, you're going to see a page that is very easy to read and basically goes through in bold print, usually it's like property liability coverage, $1.2 million, workers' compensation coverage, X number of $1,000, computer theft and electronic loss of business, X number of $1,000, burglary, fire, those kind of things. So they're all going to be on the declaration pages. And again, we'll cover some other things related to insurance too, as to your insurance policies for your church. We're all probably familiar with property and liability insurance coverage. Property and liability covers our church property to protect it, to restore it in event of some disaster, emergency, fire, earthquake. We actually had an earthquake in central Pennsylvania about 15 years ago, I think. And we actually had a church that actually filed a claim for earthquake damage. It caused some crack in the change in settling the ground from that. Liability is the key thing. From the standpoint of liability is what protects us when there may be injury, foodborne, something that may have occurred related to food served at church. The property liability, those are the biggest protections we need to have. Workers' compensation insurance for church, it's there to protect our employees. It also protects volunteers. If you all have insurance through insurance board, I can't speak to other insurances, but I've worked with insurance board coverage at Pembroke since 1988. And we have insurance board coverage at Christ Church Elizabethtown. Very good coverage. I mean, they have protections for things that we couldn't imagine, as well as they have additional coverage there. But one of the things in workers' compensation insurance coverage that you want to look for, if you have insurance board coverage, but if you don't, that it covers employees and volunteers. We were actually doing we were putting in some ceramic tile at Pembroke Church and Stairway. And one of our volunteers ended up with eye injury that came from cutting ceramic tile. And it was impacting from the standpoint that they needed some treatment. They were also going to have to be off work for like 2 weeks for this eye injury to heal. And we filed a claim on their behalf with the church's volunteer coverage under workers' compensation. Directors and officers insurance. Again, I've served on board of directors for the conference, local churches. Directors and officers insurance coverage provides protection for those of us who serve on our consistory and council and as officers in our church, that things don't turn into decisions we may make, the work that we're doing, that doesn't come back and automatically turn into us being personally liable, named in lawsuits, those kind of things. So directors and officers insurance, always want to make sure you have that in place. Auto, some churches have, you may have church-owned vehicles. You may occasionally rent a vehicle, like to go on a mission trip or go on an outing trip with your youth group, that kind of thing. So rental vehicles, you want to make sure that you have coverage for those things. Know how to contact your insurance agent. And they're looking for your calls. I can tell you that it was far better if you don't know if you're covered or if you have questions, call and ask. It is the best advice I think I can give any of us, because it's far better. We're hosting Elizabethtown Farmers Market in our church parking lot. The Elizabethtown Farmers Market has their own board. They have their own liability coverage. We worked with the insurance board and we worked through this. So we needed to ask them for proper documentation. We also squared this all up, and we know what's what and what the rules of the road for doing that kind of thing. Again, the goal is to make sure we're protected. Let's talk about church property real quick and some things to know there.
Dale.
Oh yeah, cool.
I just wanted to let you know we have approximately about 19 minutes.
Yeah.
So I know you wanted to do questions and answers. So just to put that out.
Yeah. So I'm going to fly like the wind on some of this other topic.
Right.
Thanks for providing my guidance here. So I love putting this presentation together when you can find pictures of stuff. So this is one of the nicest pictures of steeple at Christ Church in Elizabethtown. So there's valuable information about property for us to know. Know the utilities, what utilities supply your church or cross your church property, and how to contact them. You should you should be able to find your utility account numbers and phone numbers for these utilities. Having these is really valuable. So we'll go through these real quick. Here's 6 that I could come up with: electricity, natural gas or propane, water. You should know whether your water service in church is on public water, municipal water supply, or is it on a well? Is your church on a well? Same thing with sewer, public or on-site septic. What underground pipelines may cross, or utility lines that go across your church? Church I grew up in Upper Bucks County has underground petroleum pipeline runs through the church property. And communications, your voice, data, and television. This information is important for planning for safety, emergencies, and construction. It also, again, is very valuable for knowing right-of-ways, and when you come to doing, particularly when you're planning construction, as well as knowing these right-of-ways when they need to do maintenance on underground pipeline or overhead utility lines. Emergency repair contacts. I would recommend you keep. We just ran into our church the other month related to a plumber. We'll have probably our handy folks that help repair things around our church. There's times when we know that it may be emergency, or it may be more than the folks that are working or helping us as church members can do. So keep a list of some reputable contractors or repair companies that work on commercial, and the key here is commercial buildings. So here's my quickie list. Electrician, plumber, HVAC, sewer service, carpenter, roofer, mason, tree service, flooring. Those are ones that I could come up with. We can probably we may have some other unique things related to our church, but those are some things, again, good to have handy. Sewer service, I could tell, knowing who can clear a sewer line for your block sewer line, real important. Let's talk about, and we're getting closer to the end at this point, personnel. I'm going to cover employees and volunteers through this. So let's talk about employees first. Know your church employees. And we probably have, and maybe you have, these I think are typical for a church: a pastor, music director, organist. You may have a combination music director and organist, accompanist, your office administrator or church secretary, your sexton or custodian. So things to know, it's good to know about employees. Know their family, what family they have. Are they, do they have family out of state? Where do, children, as well as if there may be some special needs in their family. How long they worked for the church is always good to know, because they'll have insights. We've had some folks at our church property facility guy that was really good. And so they know how long they've worked for your church. Let's see, and as well as the strengths and challenges that they may face in what they do, and what they may be facing at times. So some key volunteers, I'm going to call these out. Worship leaders, especially the folks that can lead worship or work with a supply pastor. These are really critical. And I'm going to make a quick move here, Aquila. I'm getting a battery notice on my laptop, so I'm going to go where I can plug it in, but I can talk while we're doing this. Apologize for this. It was unforeseen, but easily fixed. So what we're talking about this is know the people that that you can call upon that can either lead worship and are called to lead worship, or that can work with a supply minister. That's real valuable. Your sound team, the people that do make your audio and maybe your live stream come to life. People that have IT skills, software, those kind of things. Oh, and again, my hat's off to what I call the fix-it guys and gals, the people that have all kinds of building skills, working trades, and are willing to share that and do things at church, as well as help organize teams. Your kitchen committee, the folks that know how much food to order, if you're having funeral lunch and those kind of things, as well as are willing to serve it, organize and get things there. And there may be some others, and we'll, again, due to the tightness on the time, I'm going to kind of speed dial through some things here. Lay members with key skills, and I think this is important for us to look at too, is when I'm looking at things, it's like there are key skills, and these folks may be serving on your consistory council, they may not, but knowing you have these skills in your congregation are really helpful. They give you, a source to go to for some questions and some guidance before you get into, again, also starting to spend a lot of church's money. So first would be a lawyer. I have to admit, it's very valuable to have an attorney that you can go to and ask, what's your take on this? Give us some guidance that we can avoid some pitfalls in this. So lawyer is key. In some cases, you may not have a lawyer, but I can tell you the other thing that is really helpful is people who work in insurance. If it's an insurance agent or insurance claims adjuster or an underwriter, folks that know insurance can help you from the standpoint, again, they can look at things from the standpoint of, do you have coverage for a situation, what you should be looking at, or maybe coverage we should expand if we do something new in our church. Banker. Bankers are really helpful when it comes to, and how we're going to pay for this. This is a great thing we want to do with our ministry, how we're going to pay, help us figure out how to pay for it. It's also very helpful to know who in your church works in the medical profession: doctors, nurses, EMTs, lab techs. There's folks that exposure to things when it comes to, again, potentially dealing with a medical emergency at your church. Building skills, the folks that work in building trades. IT skills, recognizing and thanking your volunteers. Oh my gosh, if there's one thing that makes church work, again, consciously recognize and thank your volunteers. Consider the value and impact of what the volunteers do for your church. There's informal recognition and thanks. I can say very much, saying just thank you, it goes a long way. Doing your thank yous and stuff very timely to when things were done, realizing that people were, put a lot into pulling things off. Think about some formal recognition and thanks, some ways of doing that. Calling out volunteers and teams during announcements at church. Putting in a newsletter article where you're highlighting a team and maybe anniversary, like during COVID. We've done live stream for 5 years now. It's a great way to recognize the people that brought live stream to life at your church and make it work every week. I will say this, and I think it's something for us to consider, is consider sometimes gifts to the folks that volunteer. May not be anything, I'm not looking for you to spend thousands of dollars or, big stuff, but through Penn Central Conference, the other year, one of the things that, and I really appreciate it was done was we were all given a very nice boxed pen and miniature flashlight set from some promotional company. It came, but it has its conference logo in it and stuff. Something very meaningful to me. It was very nicely done. It was recognition that, for the service that we have, and a reminder when we're working that we see this as like, yeah, this came from, the fact that people do care about what we do. Think about criteria for giving gifts to volunteers and things like high commitments of time and the value. In some cases, one of the things we've been learning too is about, we look at gifts in kind that are given to our church, people that donate materials for things. But it's also important for us to consider sometimes the value of the professional services that are coming our way. Our church is really dependent on IT and technical resources to do things anymore. So thinking about those things sometimes when it's like, hey, we worked through this, we got, whatever those things may be sometimes. Sometimes the other thing you may want to look at to give is we see those 4imprint commercials or some of those other places. Sometimes even just a T-shirt or golf shirt that has a church logo on for a group sometimes can really, be a big boost. It also calls out, the specialists for them. So now we're just about wrapped up. One of the things I also made sure that I wanted to make sure we have a few minutes to talk about is when you need help and where to go for help. Because we all do. And even all the years that I've done church work, and I appreciate that people come to me, but there are plenty of times that I'm looking at who can I go to that knows my goal in looking for help is that I need to find somebody who's willing to understand and will care with me, but also I'm hoping that has experienced this before and knows more than I do and can help me through where we're at. So some things we should look at, some criteria when it comes to who to go to for help. What I wanted to plant the seeds for is when to get help. So some ideas I thought about when you're doing something new. When you're doing something new is sometimes when you need help. We haven't done this before. How's this going to work? What should we be thinking about? What are the things that we shouldn't do to make this successful? So when you're doing something new is one thing. When you're investing a lot of money in your church, doing repairs or like our church, we're looking to install an elevator. It's going to be a costly project. So, making sure that we're doing the right things because of all the money that we're going to put into this. When you're uncomfortable or unsure about the next steps. We know biblically that Moses, others were on journeys in the Bible. And, there were times where they were uncomfortable. They were unsure about the next steps. We're in the same boat as being disciples in the here and now. When you're dealing with what appears to be a controversial situation, it's also helpful to get help then that we can kind of work that we can work things out. With this group, I will share one of my favorite Bible passages in the Beatitudes. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. What we do to make peace is so important in for our church and for the church. So where to go for help real quick. And you probably know these things, but I like having a list. So it's a good reminder when you get in a crisis, what to do. Your local UCC association and ministerium. There are folks there that, again, the churches in your area and the ministers around, they may have done what you're doing. They may have dealt with this situation before. They can give you some insights. It's good. It's why I advise going to those meetings and getting to know the folks in your associations and ministeriums. Our good friends and our conference staff at Penn Central Conference. There's things that are posted on the website that can help. And again, our phone number 717-652-1560. I want to make sure you're aware of this. The Penn Central Conference Church Futures Commission. Our friend Dr. Mike Gibbs and Reverend Bruce Bouchard, their team of folks and the church coaches that they have, great group of folks to work with. Where you're looking at planning, where do we go next with our church? How to deal with controversy, how to bring things together. We want to look at our constitution bylaws. Can you give us some ideas of what we may be missing, or what we should include, or maybe some things we should take out? But Mike and their team, I mean, they're the great group of folks. Again, the other one, we are parts of the United Church of Christ, and I can tell you, UCC.org, as a someone who does lay supply work in the United Church of Christ, I learned more of what's on UCC.org, and great resources are out there, incredible materials for things, and help resources there. Other professionals, again, there are times where we need the advice of an attorney, a banker, or probably an insurance agent. Those are probably key professionals. There may be some others, but those are three. When it comes to larger scale business, at our church, sometimes getting insights from them can be real helpful. The other one I want to call out to close things out are church consultants. And there are firms that specialize in doing church consulting and help you with, primarily in the areas of finance is what I'm most familiar with, but they can help with church governance. They can help with legacy gift planning, working with folks in your congregation of what kind of legacy gifts and bequests that you may want to do. I can tell you again, with the project we're doing at Christ Church in Elizabethtown, we are working to do capital campaign. We've engaged, we entered into contract with church consultants. We're working with Kirby Smith. Again, they're great. They're locally based, but I can tell you there are church consultants that are out there that you can look at that can help with some of the things. And it's also there's value of having, like, with our Church Futures Commission folks or outside consultants. And again, when you bring in our conference ministers, they're looking at your church and bringing expertise and insights from larger settings and stuff. So now I've talked a long time. Aquila, thanks for all your help and for guiding me. Like, you need to move it along, mister. So let's open it up at this point. Do you all have comments and or questions about things? As well as, do you think this was a worthwhile investment of your time this evening? Oh, someone in the chat.
Yeah, Dave said, thank you for the presentation. Lots of great information packed into 90 minutes.
Well, thanks. Thanks. Yeah. I tried to hit on, again, I'll go back to what I talked about at the beginning real quickly, was I looked at this from the standpoint of, I've worked in business and industry. I've also spent a lot of time in doing church work, but I hadn't experienced this going to a new church and not knowing things and being all of a sudden drawn into this. Holy cow, I'm going to be the president here. There's a whole lot of what I don't know. And so these things were really, it was kind of what I put together for us. Are these key things that are really helpful, as well as the times where it's like, we need help. There are times I'm very upfront with the fact of, like, I need someone to go to. We have communities of practice too. And I want to share too, again, when it comes to like the Church Futures Commission, it's very helpful from us from a Church Futures Commission that will be going forward. That will be part of something that will exist under the Keystone Conference. There's very much, it's been very much defined that we want to keep that continuing going forward and stuff.
Thank you. So there's one question. So Ms. Barbara said, thank you for the information. This has been helpful for her as a new council member. And then I might say it wrong. Is it Dietmore?
Oh, D-More.
All right, D-More.
Are you willing to share your slideshow with
The
us?
slides. Yes, I will tell you what, I have the email list from Paul. what I will look to do, and I need to share this with you so you know how these would get to you. This slide deck, again, when you add pictures, we get it. Graphics are big, make files big. So I can share I can go the route of, the only way I know that I can share this because the PowerPoint file is so big is I can use a tool. I learned this at our church, it's called WeTransfer. And WeTransfer will send you, what you'll do is you'll get an email. It'll come from me. I'll probably get this squared away tomorrow. It'll come from me and it'll provide a link where you can go to download. Oh, and even, yeah, Dave, I appreciate the idea about a PDF. I'll double check it as a PDF if I can get it, if it makes it smaller. But I'll one way or the other, I'll get you, and I have, again, I have Paul's email, the invitation for tonight's workshop. So I know how to get a hold of everybody. So I'll go work on some things that way to see if I can get it distributed that you can have it. Again, it's valuable to have. It's nice to have resources, that we can go back to and stuff. I will, say too, as we go to, I have actually one more slide in the. Oh, go ahead.
So I'm just going to graciously, so you can do that, but we are a minute over the time that has been allotted for us. And so I want to be courteous of all of our time.
Oh yeah, thanks, Aquila.
Yeah, I want to be courteous of our time, and thank you all. This is being recorded, and this will be available for everyone as well. And so any final comments, Mr. Dell, before we close out in prayer?
No, thank you all very much for your interest in this workshop, for the time we spent together. Most importantly, thank you for service to the church.
Thank you. So thank you so much for, as it has already been said, great information packed into 92 minutes. How about that? So thank you all for your time. Let us go out as I offer you a blessing. Oh God, we thank you for this information, to allow us to be better stewards, to allow us to have better understanding, and to be able to have information that we can share with those that we serve, with those that serve with us, looking to the future of the church, looking to the future of what you have for each one of us. So we thank you for this moment. We thank you for Dale and the time and energy that he put into providing us this information tonight. Go before each one of us. Amen.
Amen. Thanks again, everybody. Hopefully we will see you on Friday and Saturday at the conference meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Good night, everybody.